He showed up one night with a black man.
Oh.
And I was, don't take this wrong, I was very upset.
Listen, don't take this wrong, but I can't
Well,
picture.
she didn't bring one for me.
Oh.
Good morning. It's Monday, Cold War Monday, March the 9th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and the Cold War. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Our Varney and Company picks it up right now. Stu, take it away.
Now, let's do it. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Let's get right to it. It's all about oil and how long it'll take to get the price down. Overnight, the price of oil hit $119 a barrel. It has since backed off, but it remains at or close to 100. It's 101.63 as we speak. The price of gas, that's gone up as well. $3.47 is your average now for regular. That price, by the way, does not factor in the latest oil price spike. I want you to take a look at California. Right there, you will pay $5.20 per gallon for regular. That's California. All right, stocks across the board down. At one stage, Dow futures were off 1,000 points. Now the Dow is off 563. The Nasdaq is down 283. That's 1% down across the board. Dow, S&P, and Nasdaq. A little change though for Bitcoin. We're looking at $68,100 a coin. Gold still around 5,100, 51.02. The 10-year Treasury yields 4.19 at last count, now down to 4.17. And the 2-year, that's coming in at 3.61%. And we have these developments in the war. Iran's senior clerics have chosen the son of the late Ayatollah Khomeini to be their new leader. Mojtaba Khomeini is considered a hardliner, close to the Revolutionary Guards. Our president says he won't last long without his approval. President Trump wants ships to start moving quickly through the Straits of Hormuz. Go to it, he says. The U.S. is developing an insurance plan for Gulf shipping, and the U.S. Navy offering escorts. Iranian drones and missile attacks continue, but at a slower pace. More firepower is headed to the Gulf. The objective is a fast removal of the missile threat. Some Gulf states have shut down oil production. They've run out of storage space. Around the world, governments are considering releasing oil from their strategic petroleum reserves. Well, there is other news. In New York, the Upper East Side of Manhattan looked like a war zone Saturday. Rival groups of protesters lined up near the mayor's residence at Gracie Mansion. One explosive device was thrown, apparently at anti-Muslim protesters. The mayor is under attack for not responding more forcefully. His wife is under attack. She reportedly liked a social media post dismissing an investigation of the October 7th attacks as a mass rape hoax. Monday, March 9th, 2026.
And that was Stuart Varney. Real quick about the Iran so-called war. It's not. It's a military operation. I forget what it's called, Enduring Freedom or Fury Murray or something like that. But anyways, one of the good reasons that besides the fact that it's the law, to get a declaration of war before you commit combat troops is that right now, there's a lot of people saying a lot of treasonous things about the war, about they won't go after the troops. They know better. That's a political hotspot. At least they won't go after the troops yet, but they will go after the war and the president and all that. And they will basically, they're acting treasonously. This is why the liberals want peace all the time. They resist declarations of war because once you have a declaration of war, then you can start prosecuting people, including the news media, for treason. Back in a minute. Thank you. Here's the truth. Liberals are not afraid of confrontation. They thrive in it. They manipulate with charm, with rage, with guilt. Boundaries remove the bait. Strip away the theatrics and leave only facts, and liberals are powerless. When conservatives say no without trembling, walk away without flinching, refuse to respond to provocation, that's when liberals feel the shift. Conservatives are no longer an actor in the liberals' stage play. They're the director of their own lives, and that's unbearable to liberals. The moment conservatives stop over-explaining is the moment they start winning. Liberals are masters at making conservatives doubt their decisions. They question motives, tone, timing, anything to chip away at the conservatives' confidence. But boundaries don't require explanation, they require consistency. Conservatives don't need to justify their choices to people who refuse to respect them. They don't need to argue values with someone who profits off their insecurity. The boundary is the explanation. That is intolerable. Full stop. That is power. That is clarity. Clarity terrifies those who depend on confusion to keep control. Clarity terrifies those who depend on confusion to keep control. They will call conservatives cold, selfish, unreasonable. Let them. That's not truth. It's noise. The louder they scream, the more it reveals how much they depend on conservative compliance, because for a liberal, conservative compliance was a drug. Endless tolerance was their playground. But when conservatives sober up and start making decisions from a place of worth instead of fear, liberals lose access. Nothing frustrates a liberal more than losing control over someone they thought they had locked in. But let's be honest. Boundaries won't feel comfortable at first. They will feel heavy. Conservatives will second-guess themselves. They'll wonder if they're being too much, but they're not. They're being free. They're being whole. They're choosing peace over approval. That's not selfish. It's sacred. The more conservatives practice it, the stronger they get, because boundaries are not meant to push people away. Boundaries are meant to protect the right people and remove the wrong ones. They are an invitation to mutual respect, and anyone who cannot honor that invitation has no business in the conservatives' inner circle. So, hold the line without apology, without fear. Conservatives owe no one unlimited access to their life. Boundaries are not about rejection. They're about direction, and the moment that conservatives understand that is the moment they stop being a target. They start becoming a force. Liberals hate that. That's not your problem anymore. If you need their approval, they win. That's the game. That's the hook. Liberals are masters at keeping conservatives hungry for praise, desperate for recognition, constantly second-guessing their own value until they forget who they are. Liberals will dangle compliments like a carrot, only to yank it back the moment conservatives get close because they want validation to come through them. That's how liberals maintain control. They want conservatives to become addicted to their opinion of them. But the moment conservatives stop playing that game, the moment they realize that value does not require external confirmation, conservatives take their power back. Tough direction is not arrogance, it's clarity. It's conservatives looking in the mirror and saying, we're enough. Not perfect, but whole. Liberals can't stand that because it means their opinion becomes irrelevant. Conservatives are not swayed by liberal disapproval. They're not controlled by liberal praise. Conservatives are free, and freedom to a liberal is unbearable because they can't manipulate people who don't need what they're offering. When conservatives validate themselves, conservatives stop auditioning for a role in the liberals' drama. They stop explaining their worth. They stop negotiating their identity. They simply are, and that kind of certainty radiates. It repels manipulation. Liberals will test it, of course. They'll throw their usual tricks at conservatives: gaslighting, guilt, fake apology, sudden praise, to see if conservatives will bite. But when conservatives have done the work, when their esteem is no longer for sale, the liberals' bait falls flat. It doesn't move anyone, and that frustrates them deeply. Understand this: liberals survive on supply. That supply is conservative attention, conservative reactions, conservative emotional energy. When conservatives validate themselves, the supply dries up. Back in a minute. Thank you. A little bit more Stuart Varney.
Iran's foreign minister is rejecting calls for a ceasefire. He says Iran needs to continue the fight. Watch this.
We never give up, we never surrender, and we continue to resist as long as it takes. We continue to defend ourselves, and we are defending our territory, our people, and our dignity. And our dignity is not for sale.
Okay, so this is classic, where the perpetrators now claim to be the victim. They've been perpetrating, Iran has, for 50 years. Their stated goal is twofold. Number one, to wipe Israel off the face of the map, and number two, to destroy the United States of America and everybody in it. And now that the United States and Israel have decided we've had enough of that, now he claims to be a victim. He's the victim. This is typical narcissist attitudes. Narcissists do the same things. And I'm not saying that this guy is a narcissist. I don't know that he is, but he is certainly using the narcissist's tools and techniques. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, motivation.
While everyone else is gossiping, while everyone else is comparing themselves to everybody else, I dare you to block out the world and focus on yourself.
It is time to get focused. It is time to decide I'm going to work on myself and develop myself and see what I can become.
Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. And you can go further than you think. You in 3 and you got 6 gears. But you're accustomed to 3, you're accustomed to 4. I challenge you to push it to all the gears you got. Give it everything you got. I I want to see how far I can go. I want to see what I can accomplish. I want to see what I can do, what I can be, what I can have. I want to see. I don't want to see what I think I can do. I don't want to see what I think is possible. I want to see what my life would look like if I didn't count the cost.
It takes a lot of guts. You don't have nothing but lint in the corner of your pocket. You're out here talking about living your dream. And people laughing at you. And they're doubting you. When you're uncommon, get ready for the criticism. Get ready for the opposition. Get ready for the common people not to understand you. Get ready for people to try and block you and conspire against you.
If you want something, you can get it. It only takes will. You can do it. Why not? Because somebody said it is impossible. It can't be done. I'll tell you this, there's never been a statue erected for a critic. Everybody tell you how to do it, they never did it. Moral of the story is, do you, be you. Stop obsessing over these celebrities. Live your life. Step into your greatness.
And those who don't understand is none of your spiritual business.
You are what's going to blow you up. You are what's going to change your situation. You are what's going to take you to the next level. So stop looking at them and start focusing on the greatness in you.
There's some people who believe it's their personal business to stop you from living your dream. You want to make your dream come true, you got to stay focused. Some people rather get even than get ahead. Stay focused on where you want to go. I just kept on doing what I was supposed to do. You can learn all the techniques in the world. If you don't believe in yourself, it won't happen for you. You've got to focus on you. Telling yourself every day, here I go again, and I got what it takes. This is my day, and nothing out here is going to stop me.
You cannot have a positive life with a negative mindset. Because as long as we own that negativity, it's going to produce negativity. Don't complain. Don't talk negative. Average people use their time to whine and complain. Average people talk problems. The greats talk solutions.
You got a better chance to be successful if you can go in yourself. If you can block out the negative talk, if you can block out the negative thoughts, and if you can block out the negative people.
If we're all only made up of atoms, then why don't you become the bigger energy, the stronger energy, the superior one? Stop waiting for others to do it first and break through. And go do it yourself. If you can break through for yourself, you will break through for others. And others will be in awe of you. Increase your energy and let others thrive off it. When living life, try new things. Jump, fall, fight, create love. Live extreme and push your boundaries. Why? Simply because there will be no other time for you to do this. You can dream of these things, but understand you can also achieve them. The moments that take your breath away are the ones that count. You need the downs to make the ups. You need the ups to create the downs. You need to feel the opposites to truly understand the full reality of the life you are living.
It's your dream. Nobody's going to see it like you do it. And nobody's going to be as dedicated to it as you are. It's your dream, and they don't have to understand. And they don't have to like it. It doesn't make a difference. It's your dream. And you, my friend, have been given the task to make it happen. And you can't let anything stop you from doing what you were called to do.
Everybody won't see it. Everybody won't join you. Everybody won't have the vision. It's necessary to know that a lot of people like to complain, but they don't want to do anything about their situation. That you are an uncommon breed. You have to know within yourself that I can do this. Even if no one else sees it for me, I must see it for myself. There's the people that win, and there's the people that lose. And the people that win have something in common when it comes to this level of criticism. Every single bit of negativity, every single bit of doubt, every single negative comment, every single person that says, you can't do this, this could never happen, those go into a bank. And every time you're tired, every time you're frustrated, every time you want to quit, you remember what these people said. And winners understand that this is some of the most valuable fuel that you can ever have. The only way that you can lose on this journey is by giving up. There are no failures. There's only quitting. Every single failure, every single hardship, every single obstacle is going to serve you if you allow yourself to let it serve you. Because if you're executing day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, over the course of time, regardless of what anybody says, if you are executing day in and day out, no matter what, there is not a single thing that can stop you.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Steve Inman.
Well, people all around the world are more vigilant and more aware of their surroundings, like this driver who is about to get the surprise of a lifetime. But I don't think the surprise is really on the victim here. It's really on these carjackers that try and attempt to jack this car, but instead they receive free complimentary body piercings in the process. My God, now taking several doses of lettuce and medicine, and this douchebag on the ground like some AI character in Grand Theft Auto. My God, no mercy being displayed, and rightfully so. A cat even passes through like, man, what the hell's going on here? It looks like this driver is finished and driving off, while this tool bag on the ground continues to twitch and glitch in the Matrix.
And that was Steve Inman. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Cold War.
June 9th, 1982. Syria scrambled 80 MiG fighters to defend their homeland. By sunset, 82 would never return. Israel lost 0. This wasn't just an air battle. This was the afternoon the Soviet Union discovered their military technology was obsolete, and the shockwave from those few hours would help bring down an empire 9 years later. What you're about to hear remained classified for 20 years. The Israelis called it Operation Mole Cricket 19. The Soviets called it something else entirely. By June 1982, Lebanon had become a powder keg. The Palestine Liberation Organization operated from Beirut with impunity. Israel's northern border bled from rocket attacks. But this story isn't about ground warfare. It's about what waited in the Bekaa Valley. Syria had deployed 19 surface-to-air missile batteries across the Bekaa Valley, Soviet SA-2, SA-3, and SA-6 systems, the same technology that had bloodied American air power over Vietnam. These weren't just defensive weapons. They created an aerial fortress protecting Syrian air superiority. The Israeli Air Force had tried probing these defenses weeks earlier. They'd lost aircraft. Pilots had died. The Soviet systems worked exactly as advertised. So the question wasn't whether Israel would confront this threat. It was how they'd do it without losing dozens of jets and pilots in the process. Here's what most histories leave out. Israel wasn't fighting this battle alone. They had something the Soviets never anticipated. Complete access to American early warning technology, electronic warfare capabilities, and real-time coordination systems. E-2C Hawkeye AWACS aircraft, flying command centers, advanced jamming pods that could blind radar systems, most critically, anti-radiation missiles that could home in on active radar emissions. As one Israeli commander later stated, the operation demonstrated not just tactical superiority, but a fundamental gap in how the West and East approached integrated air warfare. But technology alone doesn't win battles. What Israel was about to attempt had never been tried before. A synchronized, multi-layered assault combining drones, electronic warfare, anti-radar missiles, and fighter aircraft in a single coordinated strike. If it failed, the casualty count would be catastrophic. June 6, 1982. Israel launched its invasion of Lebanon, Operation Peace for Galilee. The official objective was to push the PLO back 40 kilometers from the border. But Israeli military planners knew the real test would come when Syria inevitably intervened. Ground forces advanced. Syrian forces began mobilizing. Syrian MiG-21s and MiG-23s started flying combat air patrol over the Bekaa. The SA-6 missile batteries went to full alert status. Israeli reconnaissance confirmed what everyone expected. The Syrians were preparing for a massive air confrontation. By June 8th, Syrian and Israeli aircraft had already clashed in limited engagements. Syrian surface-to-air missiles had forced Israeli jets to break off attacks. The message from Damascus was clear. The Bekaa Valley was a no-fly zone for Israeli aircraft. What Syria didn't know, what the Soviet advisors manning those radar stations couldn't possibly know, was that for 3 days, Israeli drones had been crisscrossing the valley, invisible to Syrian radar operators, mapping every frequency, every radar pulse, every communication channel. The Israelis weren't avoiding the Bekaa Valley. They were studying it. And on June the 9th, at precisely 2:00 p.m., they would demonstrate what they'd learned. 1400 hours, June the 9th, 1982. Syrian radar operators in the Bekaa Valley suddenly detected multiple airborne contacts approaching from the west, slow-moving, low altitude. The radar signatures looked like Israeli aircraft. They weren't. Israeli Mastiff and Scout drones, unmanned decoys. Their purpose was simple: force Syrian SAM batteries to activate their radar systems. The moment those radars powered up, they became targets. Here's the brilliance. The Syrians had a choice: ignore the contacts and potentially let Israeli aircraft through, or activate their missile systems and reveal their exact positions and radar frequencies. Syrian doctrine, trained by Soviet advisors, dictated one response: engage all airborne threats. The Syrians made the expected choice. Dozens of SA-6 missiles streaked toward the drones. Some hit their targets. Most didn't. These weren't multi-million-dollar fighters, but relatively cheap unmanned aircraft. But something else happened in those first minutes. Something the Syrian crews never saw coming. The moment Syrian radar operators achieved missile lock, Israeli electronic warfare aircraft activated their systems. Boeing 707s converted into flying jamming stations. Simultaneously, American-supplied AGM-45 Shrike and AGM-78 standard anti-radiation missiles began raining down on active radar sites. Syrian radar screens dissolved into static. Communication channels filled with interference. Anti-radiation missiles homed in on the electromagnetic emissions from active SA-6 systems. Syrian missile crews found themselves blind, deaf, and under direct attack. In the first 90 minutes of the operation, 17 of 19 Syrian SAM batteries were destroyed or damaged beyond operational capability. The Soviets had spent years building this integrated air defense network. Israel dismantled it in less time than a commercial flight from Tel Aviv to Paris. Imagine being a Syrian radar operator in those moments. You've trained on Soviet equipment for years. You know the doctrine. You do everything correctly. And suddenly your screen goes white with jamming, your communications are dead, and missiles are impacting around your position. You're fighting blind against an enemy that can see everything. But the destruction of the SAM batteries was just the opening act. Because now, with Syrian air defenses crippled, the Bekaa Valley airspace was about to become a killing field. With their surface-to-air missile shield obliterated, Syria had one option left: launch every available fighter aircraft. What followed would be remembered as one of the most lopsided air battles in modern warfare. Syrian Air Force scrambled MiG-21 and MiG-23 fighters. Israeli F-15 Eagles and F-16 Fighting Falcons were already airborne in combat air patrol. E-2C Hawkeye AWACS coordinated Israeli fighters with real-time intelligence. Syrian fighters arrived over the Bekaa Valley without ground-controlled intercept guidance. Here's what made this a massacre rather than a battle. Syrian pilots were trained to rely on ground controllers to vector them toward enemy aircraft. Soviet doctrine emphasized centralized control. Ground radar stations told pilots where to fly, when to engage, when to disengage. Israeli jamming had severed that connection completely. One Israeli pilot later described watching a group of Syrian MiGs flying figure-eights over the valley. They just flew around and obviously had no idea what to do next. Without ground control, without radar guidance, Syrian pilots were essentially flying blind into an arena where Israeli pilots had complete situational awareness. By sunset on June 9th, 29 Syrian MiGs confirmed destroyed. Israeli losses were 0, 29-0. In any other context, those numbers would seem impossible. But June 9th was just the beginning, because the Syrian Air Force, disbelieving their losses, would try again the next morning. June 10th, 1982. Damascus ordered another massive scramble. Syrian commanders believed the previous day's losses were anomalous. Bad luck, perhaps a few tactical mistakes. They were wrong. Syrian Air Force launched even more fighters. Israeli tactics remained unchanged. E-2C coordination, complete air superiority, no ground-based threats. Syrian pilots still operated without effective ground control. The result was 35 additional Syrian aircraft destroyed. 64 Syrian fighters destroyed in 2 days. Israeli Air Force losses remained at 0. This wasn't about pilot skill alone, though Israeli pilots were superbly trained. This was about systems integration. The Israelis fought as a networked force. Every aircraft, every radar system, every jamming platform connected and coordinated. The Syrians fought as individual units, each isolated and vulnerable. By June 11th, the Syrian Air Force effectively ceased offensive operations. They'd lost not just aircraft, but the institutional confidence that makes an air force effective. But the final accounting of Operation Mole Cricket 19 would prove even more devastating than those 2 days suggest. When military historians compiled the final records of the 1982 Lebanon War Air Campaign, the numbers defied belief. Total Syrian aircraft losses ranged between 82 and 88, depending on the source. Total Israeli F-15 and F-16 losses in air-to-air combat remained at 0. Syrian SAM batteries destroyed numbered 17 of 19. Duration of SAM suppression was approximately 2 hours. Multiple Israeli pilots achieved ace status, meaning 5 or more kills, during this operation alone, 82 to nothing. Even accounting for technological advantages, even acknowledging American support, even considering superior training, these numbers represent something unprecedented in modern air warfare. But here's the question that haunted Moscow. If Soviet equipment and Soviet doctrine could be defeated this decisively, what did that mean for the Cold War balance of power? The Soviet military newspaper Krasnaya Zvezda faced an impossible task. Explain how Soviet-equipped and Soviet-trained forces had suffered catastrophic defeat without admitting Soviet military doctrine was fundamentally flawed. Krasnaya Zvezda published claims that 67 Israeli aircraft, including multiple F-15s and F-16s, had been shot down during the Bekaa Valley fighting. Complete fabrication. Not a single verifiable Israeli combat loss could be documented. This wasn't just propaganda for domestic consumption. Soviet military exports were a cornerstone of their geopolitical influence. Nations bought Soviet weapons because they believed they worked. The Bekaa Valley demonstrated otherwise. So Moscow did what authoritarian regimes do when confronted with inconvenient reality. They invented a different reality. But propaganda couldn't conceal the truth from the people who mattered most. Soviet military leadership. Behind the Kremlin walls, a very different conversation was taking place. Years after the Cold War ended, former Israeli Air Force Commander David Ivry revealed a conversation he'd had in 1982 with a Czechoslovak general visiting Moscow. The general told Ivry something remarkable. The general said that Soviet military leadership understood what had happened in the Bekaa Valley. They recognized that Western technology, American sensors, American electronic warfare, American coordination systems had achieved decisive superiority over Soviet equipment. And that realization, he claimed, began to fundamentally alter Soviet strategic thinking. Operation Mole Cricket 19 exposed several fatal flaws in Soviet military doctrine. Over-centralized command and control that collapsed when communications were disrupted. Radar and SAM systems vulnerable to electronic countermeasures. Fighter aircraft doctrine that couldn't adapt when ground control was severed. Fundamentally, an approach to warfare that assumed technology parity with the West. When Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in 1985, he faced an impossible economic reality. The Soviet Union could not match Western military technology without bankrupting itself. The arms race was already lost. The Baikal Valley hadn't caused that reality, but it had made it undeniable. One Czech general's assessment to Ivry suggested the operation contributed to Soviet recognition, that reform, glasnost, perestroika, was necessary because military competition with the West was unsustainable. 82 Syrian aircraft destroyed in an afternoon. 17 SAM batteries eliminated in 2 hours. But the real casualty of Operation Mole Cricket 19 might have been the Soviet Union's confidence that it could compete militarily with the West. And confidence in a superpower confrontation is everything. Behind the statistics were men in cockpits, Israeli pilots who trained for years for this exact scenario, and Syrian pilots who found themselves in a nightmare they couldn't comprehend. Israeli F-15 and F-16 pilots described almost surreal combat experiences. With complete radar coverage from the E-2C Hawkeye, they knew where every Syrian aircraft was before engaging. They could choose their targets, their approach angles, their moment of attack. One pilot compared it to hunting with night vision goggles against opponents stumbling in the dark. Israeli pilots flew 40-plus hours per month, practiced against aggressor squadrons using Soviet tactics, and trained in realistic combat scenarios. Syrian pilots, constrained by fuel costs and Soviet training doctrine, flew a fraction of those hours and practiced primarily set-piece intercepts guided by ground control. But statistics and training advantages don't capture what it means to be in a cockpit when missiles are flying. What did it feel like to be a Syrian pilot, alone in the sky, unable to contact your controllers, watching your wingman explode? Syrian pilots weren't cowards. They flew into battle knowing Israeli aircraft were waiting. They'd lost comrades the day before. They launched anyway. Imagine this. You're flying a MiG-23 at 600 miles per hour. Your radio is filled with static, Israeli jamming. Your ground controllers can't vector you toward targets. Your radar warning receiver is screaming. Multiple Israeli fighters have locked onto you. You're trying to find targets visually while evading missiles from threats you can't see on your instruments. Soviet doctrine had trained Syrian pilots to be components in an integrated system. When that system was dismantled through electronic warfare, the training that should have saved them became a liability. They'd learned to rely on external guidance. When it disappeared, they had no fallback doctrine. 82 airmen died in those 2 days. Most were young men following orders, flying into a battle their commanders assured them they could win. The failure wasn't theirs. It was the system's. The Baikal Valley turkey shoot wasn't primarily about pilot skill. It was about a fundamental shift in how wars are fought. By 1982, air warfare had evolved beyond dogfighting. It had become about sensors, data links, electronic warfare, and system integration. The side with better information, who could see more, communicate faster, coordinate more effectively, possessed insurmountable advantage. American military technology in the 1980s reflected a decade of post-Vietnam innovation. AWACS aircraft providing complete battlefield awareness. Data links allowing real-time information sharing between aircraft. Advanced electronic warfare capabilities. Beyond visual range missiles. Integrated air defense suppression doctrine. Soviet military technology, by contrast, remained rooted in 1960s and 1970s concepts. Centralized control, limited pilot initiative, systems designed to work in isolation rather than as integrated networks. The Baikal Valley didn't just demonstrate Israeli tactical brilliance or American technological superiority. It revealed that modern warfare had fundamentally changed, and only one side had adapted. The immediate military consequences of Operation Mole Cricket 19 were straightforward. Israel achieved complete air superiority for the remainder of the Lebanon War. Syrian forces could not effectively resist without air cover. The PLO, the original target of the invasion, found itself without its primary protector. Syria effectively withdrew from direct confrontation with Israeli forces. Syrian Air Force required years to rebuild capability and confidence. Soviet prestige as arms supplier was damaged throughout the Middle East. Other Soviet client states began questioning the reliability of Soviet equipment. Israel shared detailed battle damage assessment and electronic intelligence with the United States. American military planners gained unprecedented insight into Soviet SAM systems, radar capabilities, and fighter aircraft performance. Intelligence that would prove invaluable if Cold War tensions ever escalated to direct conflict. But the deepest impact of June 9, 1982, wouldn't be measured in destroyed aircraft or captured territory. It would be measured in perception. Specifically, Moscow's perception of its own military vulnerability. By 1982, the Soviet Union was already straining under the economic burden of military competition with the West. Afghanistan had become the USSR's Vietnam, an unwinnable counterinsurgency draining resources and morale. The nuclear arms race consumed vast percentages of Soviet GDP. And now, the Baikal Valley suggested that even without nuclear weapons, Soviet conventional forces might not match Western capabilities. The United States spent approximately 6% of its GDP on defense in the early 1980s. The Soviet Union spent an estimated 15 to 20% of its GDP, a proportion that was slowly strangling economic development and civilian living standards. The Baikal Valley revealed a deeper problem. The Soviet Union couldn't simply build more MiGs or deploy more SAM batteries. The technological gap was qualitative, not quantitative. Closing it would require fundamental reforms in Soviet military research, manufacturing, and doctrine. Reforms that would cost tens of billions of rubles the USSR didn't have. When Mikhail Gorbachev became General Secretary in 1985, he inherited this reality. His reforms, Glasnost and Perestroika, were partly driven by recognition that the USSR could not sustain military competition with the West indefinitely. Did Operation Mole Cricket 19 directly cause the collapse of the Soviet Union? No. But it contributed to a growing recognition within Soviet leadership that the Cold War was unwinnable on current terms. The lessons of Operation Mole Cricket 19 reshaped military thinking worldwide. After 1982, air forces globally recognized several critical realities. Integrated air defense systems must be resilient to electronic attack. Fighter pilots require training to operate independently when centralized control is disrupted. Information dominance, knowing where enemy forces are and denying them the same knowledge, is decisive. Unmanned systems can serve as force multipliers and expendable reconnaissance assets. When the United States launched Operation Desert Storm in 1991, the air campaign bore unmistakable similarities to Mole Cricket 19. Opening strikes targeted Iraqi air defense radars and SAM sites. Electronic warfare aircraft jammed Iraqi communications. AWACS provided coalition aircraft with complete battlefield awareness. Iraqi fighters, when they engaged, were systematically destroyed. In the 21st century, similar dynamics play out in conflicts worldwide. Drone warfare, cyber operations, electronic warfare. All reflect the lesson Israel taught in 1982. In modern conflict, the side that can see while blinding their opponent possesses overwhelming advantage. But technology doesn't eliminate human factors. Courage, training, leadership, and moral clarity still matter. Israeli pilots flew into hostile airspace knowing they might not return. Syrian pilots did the same. The difference wasn't bravery. It was preparation, doctrine, and the systems supporting them. 41 years after 82 Syrian aircraft fell from the skies over Lebanon, the core lesson remains. Wars are won not just by weapons, but by the systems that employ them, and the minds that design those systems. June 9, 1982, began as an ordinary summer day in the Baikal Valley. By evening, modern air warfare had been redefined. 82 Syrian aircraft destroyed. 0 Israeli losses in air-to-air combat. 17 of 19 SAM batteries eliminated. 2 hours to dismantle what took years to build. But the real story isn't about kill ratios or technological superiority. It's about the moment when one superpower realized it could not match its rival. When the Soviet Union understood that military competition with the West was unsustainable. Operation Mole Cricket 19 didn't end the Cold War. That would take 9 more years, a Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, economic reforms that came too late, and ultimately the dissolution of the USSR in 1991. But on that June afternoon in 1982, the trajectory became clearer to those paying attention. The pilots who fought that day, Israeli and Syrian alike, were men doing their duty as they understood it. Some went home. 82 never did. Their story deserves remembering, not for triumphalism, but for understanding. In war, there are no perfect victories, only degrees of tragedy. June the 9th, 1982, was decisive. It was historic. It changed military doctrine and arguably accelerated the end of the Cold War. But it was still a day when 82 families lost sons, brothers, husbands, and fathers. That's the cost of the afternoon that changed everything. 80 MiGs sent to defend their homeland. 82 that never came back.
And that was the Cold War. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.